Hello internet and welcome back to more Ghost Frontline to Exilium, and we're gonna have the global release soon, so it's in a couple of hours. Let's answer the $1 million question. Who should you be rerolling for? Short answer, don't reroll. Based on a couple of my sources, which I'll link in the description, they take all the credit. I'm the guy just summarizing stuff. You really shouldn't reroll in this game because they do give you generous tickets for you to pull a lot of characters. To put in perspective, a free-to-play character can get every single doll in like about 2 to 3 months of playing. But hey, just in case you want to reroll anyway, this will be the tier list for you. And let's just waste no time, we're gonna jump right in. Here are the options for you. If you don't know, to reroll in this game, you're gonna go through the beginner banner until you get the character that you want. Now, the beginner banner guarantees that you get an elite doll, which is from these 5 in 50 pulls. But honestly, with the arduous task of rerolling constantly for one character that you could just be getting like after a month or 2 of consistent playing, it's really not too needed. But then again, this is if you want to do it anyway. And here we have the characters, and I'm ranking them based on how worth it they are to reroll for. It's very straightforward right on screen, and I'll go ahead and explain why each of these characters are ranked in their tiers. Now, you'll notice as well, I ranked them S, A, and A minus. What the hell is A minus? A minus just means that they're not bad anyway in the end. There's not really bad characters. They're just a bit more niche or a bit more team-centric, especially with the case of Peritya, that you may not be able to find much value, at least at the start of your game, which is, you know, we're all beginners right now, yeah? But let's just move on. We're gonna break everything down. Why would you want to get Qiongjiu? Now, the pros of Qiongjiu is that she's the best single target DPS in the game currently. She boasts of a lot of instances of attacks. She has a lot of damage per attack anyway, making her the premium damage dealer that will carry you through any content, especially versus even the tougher bosses with higher HP pool. You can just burst them down with single target damage, right? On top of that, she's able to apply Overflowing Flame, which is a debuff on her skill 2. All you gotta know about this is it'll help you trigger an Anomalous Strike set effect, which is an attachment or say just the equipment set that you have on your dolls. Think about like, I don't know, relic system from HSR or artifact system on Genshin, right? Think about that. Those are the sets. We call it Anomalous Strike, or a very popular DPS set in this game. In terms of the cons though, she has slow movement speed, and I'm gonna go ahead and hide my cam. She also has a unique S2 range. Considering the pros that she gets you, and especially how impactful she is at progressing your account early on, I don't think the cons are at all a deterrent for you to get yourself a Qiongjiu. If you do get her, very nice. But do remember, there's no point rerolling constantly because eventually you should be able to get her for sure. You just gotta consistently play. The game gives you a lot of pulls. Moving up next, we have Tololo. Now, Tololo is a extra turn taker on the first turn as one of our pros. This only triggers at max Contamination Gauge. Contamination Gauge are basically alt points or skill points in a sense where if you want to use some skills or some ultimates, you might have to use X amount of Contamination Gauge. You can gain these gauge by various things that you can do via maybe a character's passive or attacking a character with certain weaknesses. If you can get maximum Contamination Gauge, you get a full extra turn of Tololo. It's gonna help you do a lot more burst damage as well, which is why she's good. Now, the cons though is also on the same exact thing. After you take your extra turn or taking your turn 1, the Contamination Gauge gained to obtain extra turn is conditional. Her skill 1 needs the enemy to have Turbid weakness, Turbid meaning her element. Turbid is basically Tololo's element, with her skill 2 only gaining your Contamination Gauge if you have 2 or more buffs on her. Fortunately as well, a lot of enemies in early game are Turbid weak, so Tololo will have the upper hand in early game, but eventually when the enemy starts not being Turbid weak, you may find some problems trying to maximize her ability to gain Contamination Gauge. And that will be the case for Tololo, still a very strong character that's gonna burst through early game for you, and having that burst damage that you can rely on is just really good for early game or beginner players, right? And moving on, we're gonna take a look at Sabrina. Now, Sabrina's role is that she's a tanky character with 12 points of stability. Stability points are basically 60% defense / the ability to take cover. Stability points exist everywhere on the enemy, on your ally as well, and the most popular way that you're going to defeat stronger enemies in early game is by breaking and depleting their stability so they cannot take cover and loses the defense bonus, and then you just crush them with damage, right? So having 12 points of stability on Sabrina makes her quite tanky and safe. Moving on, she's also a good fit for AoE teams with Peritya and Latara. Honestly, this is a part where I say it's quite unit dependent. If you want to do an AoE team, you'd have to have AoE characters that you may not have, especially early on. Not to mention, AoE has been nerfed compared to like the CN server way before then. Before, you just had to like dunk AoE and everything dies. Now AoE isn't as strong as before, especially during endgame where you have more single target world bosses or hyper tanky elites. It's not to say you cannot use AoE teams. Is number 1, you have to have an AoE team, which you may not own, and number 2, single target damage may be more valuable for you to progress your account account at the start. Moving on with the pros though, Sabrina pairs well with Tololo, where she can land Turbid Weakness Implant through her passive. This passive is really simple to use as well on Sabrina, so you have an on-demand implant of Turbid Weakness for Tololo to guarantee that she gains Contamination Gauge in order to gain her extra turn. However though, for newer players, to say you want Sabrina and Tololo instantly is kind of like stretching it, right? You never know who you're gonna get. But honestly, the main value for Sabrina will be with the tankiness that she brings. She can just absorb a bunch of damage for you. Do note, however, we also have a Swomi, which is a sustain that protects your entire team as a banner, I believe, as the game starts. So you may not really even want Sabrina because she is a tanky character, but why not just get Swomi, right? That is also a tanky character. In terms of her cons, she's very weak in single target scenarios where she only has AoE attacks. That's why she's good in AoE teams, but not that great if you need single target abilities, right? So that will be the case of Sabrina. Moving on, we have Peritya. In the case of Peritya, she is a core character for AoE teams, with her herself using a bunch of AoE damage herself, right? And moving on as well, we have her ability to gather or displace enemies on one of her skills. This is a simple one tile gather effect where the enemy is going to get closer to the center of her AoE by one tile. This is very unique because not a lot of characters do these, right? In fact, I think only she does. I might be wrong, at least at this point, moment in time. But this is so good for AoE damage because think about gathering them and then just AoEing them down. It definitely feels like it's a lot of damage. But for single target scenarios though, like if there's a boss that doesn't care about displacement, or if you have a team that doesn't utilize AoE, this skill may not be too crazy. And moving on, we have the cons as well. She has 0 single target capabilities, as I mentioned. Bosses / elites tend to suffer more against single target currently, and if you want to progress your account quickly, like beating those weekly bosses, beating those tough stages in story, it tends to have like a boss with high HP. You want to utilize single target damage more, in my opinion. And the final con I have for her would be that she does very little stability damage to enemies, which is, as I mentioned, one of the most popular ways that you're going to burst down enemies, especially early on. You're going to deplete their stability gauge and then just ruin their lives with like the minus 60% defense bonus, and they cannot take cover. That's a really good way early on for you to just beat enemies, yeah? And that will be the case of Peritya. And moving on, we have the last character on the list if you want to reroll them. Here we have Mosin-Nagant. The pros with her is that she has elemental debuffs to trigger Anomalous Strike set effect. This is similar with the case of Qiongjiu, yes, but then again, when you do get these sets or attachment, it's kind of mid to end game. So for early game players, this is not something you want to pay too much attention to yet. And yeah, let's just move on, right? She can also apply paralysis, which is a form of stunning the enemy where they just don't get to do anything. Well, this is good, but there are cases where the bosses are immune to this, right? So it may not be the thing that you want to prioritize early on. And then we have one of the longest range in the game. This is pretty normal for like a sniper user, right? Mosin-Nagant is a sniper user after all. And then she has this unique effect with 0 cooldown on all of her skills written here. This is like unique. 0 cooldown sounds stupid buster, right? But it is tied with the cons though. Check this out. The contamination gauge, which is this basically skill points, right? You need to use your skill. You gotta spend some skill points. She will deplete them very fast since she has 0 cooldown. You are able to use it every time she takes a turn, so you almost always have to spend them. She only regains contamination gauge after action support, which only activates if the enemy is under stability break when your ally attacks. The action support that we're talking about here is after your ally attack, Mosin-Nagant, if within range, will attack the enemy as well with one action support attack, right? And if you can trigger this, she'll gain contamination gauge quite quickly. However, you have to break their stability first for this to happen. This means that Mosin-Nagant would not be the crutch for you to get the stability break on the enemy. You need someone else to do it, which is where she's a bit conditional with her kit, right? However, though, as I said, there's not really bad characters. All of them are going to be useful in some cases, especially these 5 in the beginner banner. Just that some are more useful now than later, some are vice versa, right? And with that, that'll be all for today. I cannot wait for the server opening, and yeah, I will see you with more content. Subscribe if you would like more GFL, and that is all. Take care.